Hello, welcome on in everyone. So, the Void Gauntlet is out on the public test realm just a couple hours ago. I got to go out there and try it out, and I'm going to share with you guys all of the different abilities that you can use on the Void Gauntlet, a little bit of a breakdown on what you can do with each skill and what it would be good for. There are a couple clips of PvP in this video with the Void Gauntlet, but I will be uploading a full PvP video for you guys in the next few hours. So let's start off with that Annihilation Tree. The first skill we're going to take a look at is Petrifying Scream. This is basically an AoE stagger that deals damage, roots your opponent, and prevents them from moving for 2 seconds afterwards. You can gain Fortify for each enemy hit, stacking up to 3 times, and you get an increased duration of 1 second on the root if you hit an opponent that's below 50% health. I like the below 50% health passive quite a bit because I was using this stun to help finish off opponents in PvP, comboing it with my Rapier, really powerful. And the skill itself cancels quite nicely, and it's an AoE, so you can actually stagger a lot of things in one go with it, which is very valuable in PvP, especially if you have multiple targets on top of you. Now, the next skill in the Annihilation Tree is the Void Blade. And this basically just means you pull out a Void Blade from the Gauntlet and you use it kind of like a sword. It has both slashing and lunging attacks, and one thing I really want to note about the Void Blade is that it has quite a bit of reach for a melee weapon. And the fact that it's a melee magical weapon means that you can get a guaranteed backstab crit with it, which no other magic weapons currently have a mechanic for. This is a very interesting skill that opens up a different kind of playstyle for a full intelligence build that doesn't want to run something like the Rapier. So I really like the addition of kind of that magic melee weapon. The one downside of the Void Blade, in my opinion, is that it's not a permanent effect. You have to cast the ability, and then it only lasts for a portion of time, and then you have to wait a little while for the cooldown to finish before you can use it again. And the last Annihilation skill on the list is Oblivion. You basically create a big circle around you that deals 30% weapon damage per second to any enemies that are in it, granting you Empower for 20% additional damage bonus as well. Your attacks will also inflict weakness to any targets inside the area, reducing their damage by 5% for 5 seconds per hit, stacking up to 3 times. And the big one, Invigorating Oblivion. You gain 15 stamina per second for yourself and friendly allies while you're standing in the ring. This is massive. It basically gives you a field that you can use to dodge tank a bunch of different stuff. The big advantage that I see of the Oblivion field is being able to throw it down in a relatively open position and dodge tank in order to prevent a lot of range damage from killing you. I think if used correctly, this could give Void Gauntlet an interesting ability to fence opponents at range, as well as camp the circle in melee distance too. Definitely a skill that I'm going to be trying out for PvP on the Void Gauntlet and seeing how that stam regen can benefit me. Next up, the first skill of the Decay tree, Baleful Tether. Now, Baleful Tether basically just attaches a tether to your target, weakening it and empowering you. So you lower the damage they do, and you increase the damage that you do. And the tether ends if you move beyond 15 meters from the target, and it has a 10-second duration. Successful hits against a tether target will reduce your Void Gauntlet abilities by 5%, and on top of it, you gain 100% more mana regeneration while you're tethered, and then at the end of the tether, you regain 80% weapon damage as health if the tethered target dies, and this portion of the skill scales exclusively from focus. This is definitely a powerful buff / debuff. The only downside is that if you're using this in PvP and you're fighting a mobile opponent, it will be very hard not only to land the tether on them, but to stay within range and keep the buff up. The next ability we're going to look at is the Orb of Decay, which is quite a powerful AoE projectile that also returns and heals you after you shoot it. It deals 100% weapon damage and inflicts Disintegrate on the target as well. And then on top of it, you gain +5 mana per enemy hit by the orb. The orb will slow down any opponent by 30% for 3 seconds if they've already been afflicted by a debuff. So a lot of synergy with the other Void Gauntlet skills having so many debuffs. And then finally, the Detonating Orb. If you press the ability input again, you detonate the orb with a 4-meter explosion radius. Depending on the orb's range, the explosion will either damage enemies for 100% and apply a stack of Disintegrate or heal friendlies for 70% weapon damage. Again, the heal is scaling off of focus. Something I want to say about this orb is that it roll cancels and heavy attack cancels quite smoothly. This makes it a very strong option for range combo burst, especially since the orb itself is such a massive projectile and very hard to avoid because it's fast. And this skill looks like it could make the ranged gauntlet a pretty formidable ranged weapon when used correctly. And finally, the last decay skill that we've got is Essence Rupture. You fire a projectile at your opponent, that puts Rupture on them for 10 seconds, which heals anyone that hits the target for 20% of the damage done. Players additionally will receive 15 stamina when hitting the afflicted target, and on top of it, friendlies within 4 meters of the afflicted target will be healed for 80% of your weapon damage when the Rupture ends, again scaling off of focus. I think this is definitely a easier to use debuff than the Tether because your opponent can't run away from you to break this, but again, this is a projectile that you have to shoot at the opponent in order to get it to work, and just from my testing on the server, it doesn't seem like the heal seems to be working properly. So that's all the Void Gauntlet skills. Something I do want to mention before I say goodbye is that the Void Gauntlet light and heavy attacks feel a little wonky. They have a lot of load time and a bit of lag before the projectile actually shoots out. I'm not sure if this is intended, but it definitely makes the Void Gauntlet harder to aim than the other magic weapon counterparts. Based on my early impressions of the Void Gauntlet, I don't think it's going to be very OP in PvP. I definitely think it's going to be a good weapon that has uses, but it's not going to be something like the Ice Gauntlet, which is universally thought of as a fantastic, overpowered PvP weapon. Speaking of the Ice Gauntlet and all the other weapons, I would implore you guys to check out some of the changes on the PTS. There have been a lot of buffs and nerfs to different things, and Ice Gauntlet, Great Axe, things have not been kind for you. Again, look forward to a PvP commentary with the Void Gauntlet coming very soon. If you guys want to find more information on the Void Gauntlet, you can check out my site, pvpnewworld.com. I will be updating and adding all of the info within the next day for you guys too. If you want to keep up to date with me, you can give me a follow on Twitter, and if you want to catch some live gameplay, you can always give me a follow on Twitch. I do a New World Top 5 Fight series. If you guys want to send in some awesome clips to be featured on the channel, you can send that to Kristofer at pvpnewworld.com. This show is sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They can give you better ping to your favorite games, especially if you have a poor connection, and they're free to try. A link down below in the description for you. And then last but not least, a massive thank you and shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Thank you everybody so much just for tuning in and watching. I hope you guys are excited about the Void Gauntlet, excited about more content to come. Have a great night, everyone, and I'll see you next time.